Hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation. The title of my presentation today is Interest Development, Knowledge Learning, and Interactive IR. In this work, we are interested in the interaction among these three dimensions in the context of search as learning. My name is Jiqun Liu. I'm assistant professor at the University of Oklahoma, and this is a joint work with my colleague Yongju Zhang. In the area of search as learning, we are interested in the interaction between information searching and learning process. Also, we are interested in how search states and learning states change over time and how these two different states interact with each other in the process of interactive information retrieval. In our research, we noticed that users' learning performance and experience is not only affected by the information and knowledge they received along the way. Their learning process is also affected by their internal motivations like interest development state. So in this study, we are bringing this new dimension into search as learning study. We're looking at the interaction not only between information searching and learning, we're actually looking at the interplay of these three dimensions and also how the interaction among these three dimensions change over time and how different types of interests, including situational interests and different types of individual interests, affects the way people interact with search systems and the way people learn different knowledges. So this motivation actually leads to three goals of this perspective paper. The first goal is to characterize the interplay of interest development, searching, and knowledge learning. The second goal focuses on measuring the progress in interest development and knowledge learning. The third goal, which I think is the most important goal for this perspective paper, is to identify new research opportunities and open questions in conceptualizing, building, and evaluating learning-centric IR supports. So we will, based on the logic we extracted and learned about interest development, knowledge learning, and searching process, we're trying to identify new research directions, new research agenda for discussion. So to address the first goal, we are essentially adding a new dimension called interest development dimension to the process of search as learning, and we try to characterize interaction among three dimensions. So we start with this new dimension. Interest is a motivational variable that facilitates a person's cognitive engagement along with emotional commitments to certain target subjects or topics. So the process of interest development usually starts with situational interest. When users interact with, for example, search system or other people, they usually receive external stimuli of different types. For example, different web pages, knowledge graphs, comments from different people, and also videos. So these external stimuli will attract the user's attention and potentially trigger new situational interest. And after repeated interaction and long time attention focus on the same target, the user is likely to form maintained situational interest, which is more stable, more sustainable compared to trigger situational interest. And after even longer session of interaction, the user may be able to transit from situational interest state to individual interest state, where the user no longer need to rely on external stimuli. The individual interest will be self-sustainable, and it will be able to continuously support the users both cognitively and emotionally, and motivate the user to keep searching for new information on the topic and keep learning new knowledge on the topic. And when the user get to the well-developed individual's interest state, the user will gain extra resilience against unexpected disruptions and challenges. So when we encounter challenges in searching and learning, the user will be able to overcome those disruptions and challenges and keep on their searching and learning process. With respect to searching, in one of our previously published research, we identified 4 different states based on the evidence from our user studies. The first state is exploration state, where the user is kind of explore different topics, and they don't know what exactly they're looking for. They just explore different topics and see if they can find any informational cues or triggers that or points of direction which will allow them to further search and try and identify relevant information. So when the user get to the exploitation state, the user would have a topic of interest or a focused domain for search. So the user is no longer doing random exploration. The user has a topic or information patch within which the user will search, evaluate different information objects. And when the user get to the no item state, the user will know what exactly he or she is looking for. So the focus will be formulated, and the search will be more efficient. When the user get to the synthesis and evaluation state, the user will need to synthesize the information gathered in previous interactions and evaluate the usefulness, relevance, credibility of different pieces of information, and trying to present information or use the information to address the task or problem at hand. Regarding learning, we adopt the widely used taxonomy of learning objectives, which covers 6 different types of learning objectives. And these different learning objectives actually corresponds to different levels of cognitive complexity. So for example, at the remember and understand state, the user only need to deal with objective facts. So it's less intellectually challenging compared to 4 other states where the user actually need to come up with something new and hopefully produce a new intellectual product. So combining these dimensions and states together, we will be able to identify the user's state in searching and learning process in a more accurate manner. So we not only know their state in terms of knowledge, in terms of learning, in terms of search, we'll also need to know their position in terms of interest development. So if we know better about the nature of their interest, either situational interest or different levels of individual interest, we will be able to better understand the underlying motivation that pushes them to learn more and search more. So in that way, we'll be able to hopefully figure out better recommendations and interventions for the user according to their states in different dimensions. So this is our response to the first goal. The second goal focuses on the measures of progresses and state transitions. So based on our review of the literature from educational psychology, intellectual IR, and cognitive science, we identified a list of features which are potentially useful for identifying the state transitions along different dimensions. We roughly classified features into 2 categories. The first category is explicit feedback features, including explicit feedbacks from from users via different channels like survey, interviews, pre and post tests, video recordings, and thinking aloud. And we also have a list of implicit feedback features, which are mostly from interactive IR research, including search behavior, eye movements, fixations, neurophysiological signals, textual features, and so on. It's important to note that on the learning dimension and interest development dimension, it is still very challenging to measure moment by moment progress in these dimensions. It's still very difficult to identify the gradual changes within each different states. So a good starting point at the empirical level would be capturing newly triggered interests and state transitions on these two dimensions. So this is our actually our direction for the empirical research in the future. So this will be our response to the second goal. So the third goal focuses on open research questions and new directions. And the first bunch of questions is about measuring state transitions and interactions. So we're trying to, it's very important to figure out how to actually measure the in-situ progress and variations in interest development dimension, as well as the learning dimension, both within and across sessions. So in longitudinal studies, it's still very challenging at this point to actually measure moment by moment progresses, especially in the interest development state. So again, which is reason why we think a good starting point at the empirical level would be identifying the newly emerging interests, and also to capture the major state transitions on both interest development and learning dimensions. And also we're interested in the state transition patterns on these two dimensions, and also what are the interactions between the states from these three different dimensions. The second batch of questions are about state identification, prediction, and system supports. So at the application level, we will be able to, we should be able to predict states of interest development and knowledge learning from not only search interactions, but also other explicit features which we can collect from different channels. And also it's also important to leverage the knowledge we learn about states of interest development and learning in adaptively supporting users engaging in search tasks of varying types. So for example, we can utilize the knowledge we learn about states in building reinforcement learning algorithms and trying to adaptively support users according to their states in complex search tasks. The last question is about evaluation. So how can we evaluate the performance of our IR system with respect to supporting learning and the interest development? So this question is actually depends on accurate measurement of the progress on these dimensions. So when we get to the evaluation part, we need to rethink the role of existing IR metrics, which metrics will be useful to measure learning progress, which metrics will be used for to measure interest development progress. And we also need to come up with some new IR evaluation metrics. And it's also important to do state-aware adaptive evaluation and compare state-wise evaluation with session-wise or global evaluation. So that would be our response to the third goal. So main takeaways, we build a ISL model which characterizes the interplay of these three dimensions. And we highlight the challenges in measuring progresses in different dimensions. And a good starting point would be identifying the newly triggered interests and state transitions. And before we can actually apply this model in building systems, we need to overcome several hurdles, including state prediction, state-aware recommendation, and IR evaluation. So thank you all for your attention. Here's a list of related works which are highly relevant to the topic of our paper. And I will be happy to answer any questions you have.